I'm Jason Smith. I'm a civil rights lawyer from Cowtown, Panther City, Funky Town, Fort Worth, where the West begins. And I love progress, and I love Texas, and I love Progress Texas. It tells the other side of the story in Texas that people don't hear. It offers some balance in politics, and it amplifies so many voices that need to be heard in Texas for working people, for minorities, for people that are targeted. Progress Texas speaks out.
Thank you, Jason. It's Monday, December 22nd, 2025, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. We start this morning with new polling numbers from Quinnipiac University, serving as the central snapshot for what 2026 looks like, at least at the outset, as 2025 enters its final days. A rundown from Quinnipiac's Tim Malloy was shared by KBUW-TV in Austin over this weekend. The major findings, including a slightly better than expected, but still low 40% approval rating for Donald Trump, which serves as easily the best news for Trump in this entire poll. The president is far underwater on military matters, immigration, foreign affairs, and most importantly, the economy. All of those scores are below 40% approval. Confidence in Trump is in the toilet on the economy, and his efforts to blame Joe Biden are not working. Notably, on internal partisan polling, the Democrats who responded to the poll have a relatively dim view of the Democratic Party. Malloy says that measure is at its lowest in decades, while that's not at all true for Republicans, who are still bullish on their GOP in general. However, overall, across all respondents, a majority are ready for the Dems to take over in the U.S. House. When asked if they think Trump is overextending his own power, a majority say yes, it's time to reel Trump in. On that topic, interesting writing from Zach Beauchamp at Vox. Trump's war on democracy is failing is the headline here, but the central term of the piece is haphazardism. In other words, Trump's wildly inconsistent manner of governing amounts to authoritarianism without vision, a series of individual attacks on democracy lacking any kind of overarching logic, strategic structure, or clear endgame. All of those things doing real damage to the American political system, but in their poorly executed and self-undermining state, not succeeding, at least not yet, in providing Trump a lane to rule like a king in the truly unrestrained manner he seems to want. The point is to understand how this erratic state of affairs in the executive branch can lead to expectations for the next 3 years and what the final toll might be when Trump's out in 2029. Beauchamp observes that Trump possesses significant political talent driven by a primal lust for power, and unlike in his first term, his current administration is operating largely without traditional guardrails, which allows his authoritarian impulses to go unchecked. However, his impulsivity, misunderstanding of policy, and signs of aging are creating that dynamic of haphazardism in which he's succeeding in exercising outsized power plays, but also committing high-profile blunders. Experts Beauchamp talked to for this piece distinguish between an authoritarian government, which describes current ruling methods under Trump, and an authoritarian regime, which would imply permanent systemic change. So, while Trump's regular abuse of power qualifies the U.S. as currently having an authoritarian government leading into 2026, it is not yet a full authoritarian regime because Trump's actions remain disorganized and reversible. We're suffering through what Beauchamp calls a mild and short-lived burst of authoritarianism here. Not to minimize, to be clear, it's a moment that remains inherently dangerous to American democracy, and it's only reversible if all of us pay attention and act accordingly over this crucial upcoming midterm year. That means you and me both. Last time we talked about McLennan County Justice of the Peace Diane Hensley back in June. She had been making progress in her efforts against same-sex marriage from the bench dating back to 2018 when she was investigated by the Texas State Commission on Judicial Conduct for refusing to officiate marriages for any but straight couples. She won the right to sue that commission over that investigation last summer, and she's done exactly that. Eleanor Klibanoff at the Texas Tribune says Hensley's lawsuit is of broader consequence. It's asking the courts to overturn the 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges Supreme Court decision that recognized same-sex marriage nationwide. Who shows up here as Hensley's counsel but Jonathan Mitchell, the crusading conservative attorney best known as the architect of Texas's 2021 abortion ban that skirted around the legal protections of Roe v. Wade, complete with the innovation of the vigilante clause pitting Texas citizens against each other with the promise of high-dollar bounties from ratting out their neighbors. Lots more detail from Eleanor Klibanoff and the Trib in the show notes. Kind of a theme developing here this morning as we head for the holiday break, surveying the damage done in Texas as a motivator to do all we can to right the ship next year. April Towery at the Houston Press writes on the damage done to pregnancy care options in Texas as our near-complete abortion ban has triggered both a public health crisis and a medical brain drain. Since Mitchell's work in 2021, performing an abortion in Texas is a felony punishable by up to life in prison. And as we've mentioned, expanded bounty hunter provisions expanded this year further allow private citizens in Texas to sue out-of-state providers and manufacturers of abortion medications for over $100,000. Under these worsening conditions, we've seen a 6.7% drop in OBGYN residency applicants in states with bans like these, including Texas, as medical students fear they won't be trained properly to handle life-threatening complications. As is frequently the case, the impact on patient safety is most severe in Texas's rural hospitals and our reddest sections, where maternal morbidity rates have become precipitously high. Though Texas law does contain a narrow life-saving abortion exception, it is so vaguely defined and the penalties are so severe that 60% of Texas OBGYNs say they'd be fearful of legal repercussions for providing abortion care under any set of circumstances. 1/3 of them admit they don't fully understand the legal boundaries of their practice, which doubles the damage done alongside new OBGYN trainees saying no thanks to Texas, as many of our most experienced veteran reproductive care physicians consider leaving the state or just retiring early. And there's the damage done by Governor Abbott's eager cooperation with Trump's mass deportation plans. Colleen de Guzman at the Texas Tribune says that as Donald Trump has stepped up ICE efforts to round up undocumented folks, Texas DAs have begun to report that those efforts are now hindering the prosecution of violent crimes, as undocumented immigrants are increasingly retreating from public life out of fear of law enforcement. And El Paso DA James Montoya notes that ICE raids have created such a pervasive environment of fear that victims and witnesses are reluctant to participate in legal proceedings. Harris County DA Sean Tier says that his office has seen nearly a dozen criminal cases, including child sexual assaults, derailed because key participants were either deported or too terrified to show up and testify, and for good reason. ICE arrests in the Houston area have surged by 30% in recent months. To combat this, Tier's office has been trying the handing out of witness survivor identification cards to undocumented individuals who are serving as witnesses in criminal cases Tier's office is working on to present to ICE agents and hope that the bearers of these cards won't be deported, but rather allowed to perform an essential civic function in our criminal justice system. Finally, this morning here at Progress Texas, we're looking forward to attending a panel of the Democratic candidates for Texas Attorney General being put on by the Richardson Area Democrats, or RAD, next month. There's a preview of that talk up now from CBS News Texas, featuring feedback from the three Democrats in that race: attorney and former FBI agent Tony Box, former Galveston Mayor Joe Jaworski, and State Senator Nathan Johnson of Dallas. As we've mentioned, there's very little daylight between Jaworski and Johnson in recent polling from Texas Southern University. Jaworski with 21% and Johnson with 19%, a virtual tie. Box, who jumped in late and has really just gotten started campaigning, shows up at 3% here, as a high number of likely Democratic primary voters, 57%, say they're still looking at who they might eventually vote for in March for AG. That link from CBS News is in the show notes. Super important race, especially coming off over a decade of damage done to the AG's office by Ken Paxton and that Republican incumbent himself out of this race in his attempt to jump to the U.S. Senate. Our mission at Progress Texas is to counter the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine, and we rely largely on listener support to keep doing what we do. While we enjoy the support of hundreds of partners, chances are that you, dear listener, have not yet joined the team. If you're a regular, we'd love to get you on board right now. Huge thanks to monthly supporters Mary Sisson, Daniel Leonard, and Brooke Simons. We appreciate all of you very, very much. Join the team now at progresstexas.org. While you're at the website, Be sure and grab the merch to match your progressive values at our web store, including our newly expanded Humans Against Greg Abbott collection of t-shirts, stickers, and yard signs. All that and lots more at ProgressTexas.org. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Monday, December 22nd, 2025. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Progress Texas is a nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks for listening. Have a terrific day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow morning.